All right, so again, a metabolic pathway is a series of steps involved in some kind of chemical process. The products that you get in between the beginning and the end are called intermediate or metabolic intermediates. And it's important to know that a different enzyme makes each step happen. Something that scientists have found is that a lot of these metabolic pathways are pretty much exactly the same in all known organisms. For example, cell respiration happens basically the same way in you as that it happens in plants, in bacteria, in fungi, and everything else. Protists also. Yeah, scientists would say that because those pathways are the same, that must mean what? Common ancestor kind of thing, evolution, right? Phylogenetics. A couple other terms we'll mention here about metabolic pathways. Some metabolic pathways are catabolic. That word catabolic means what? Break down, degrade. And other pathways are anabolic, which we know means build up. Right. All right, I'll mention this and then I'll stop for today. Feedback inhibition. This is real important. Does it make sense for all of your chemical processes to be happening full speed all the time? No. You got to have a way to turn them on and off. And that's what this does. This helps to turn on and off stuff. It's using negative feedback. Remember, negative feedback is when your body gets to where it needs to be and then it tells your body to what? Stop. So in this case, here's a good definition of feedback inhibition. Now it sounds really complicated. Read that definition. Just read it to yourself. Temporary deactivation of an enzyme brought about by an elevation of the end product of the pathway. So let's say that there's some pathway in your body where you're making something. Let's just say you're making glucose. And you got enough glucose. What should happen to the process of making glucose if you have enough? Stop it. Doesn't make sense to keep on. That's what this is. Make something until you get enough and then turn it off. Save your resources. Don't waste them. Don't keep making stuff you don't need. This works a lot like a thermostat. It's a negative feedback thing. Make it, make it, make it, make it, make it. And then when you get to where you need to be, stop making it. Turn it back on later if you need to. Now the way this works, well, here we go. The way this works is that here's an enzyme. Here's a metabolic pathway. This pathway is making some product. Let's say that you've made a lot of this stuff. Let's say that each one of my little marks here represents one of these. So these are all our end products. Eventually these things just start building up everywhere. They're all over the place. The concentration of them just keeps getting higher and higher and higher and higher. They're everywhere. Eventually, one of these end products bumps into our enzyme, usually the first enzyme in our pathway. And it bumps into a specific site on that enzyme. Not the active site, but a different spot. It's called the allosteric, or sometimes feedback site. And when it bumps in there and it binds to that site, what does that cause to happen to that enzyme? It causes it to change shape. And when it changes shape, what did we just do to that enzyme? We deactivated it. We turned it off. Notice that usually the enzyme that gets turned off is the first one in the pathway. Because if this one gets turned off, what does that mean about all the others? They're off too. Because this one only works if A got turned into what? B. And it didn't, because that enzyme's off. So this process of feedback inhibition works when the product of the pathway binds to a specific site, the allosteric site, on the first enzyme in the pathway. When it does, It changes the shape, turns that enzyme off. But is this a permanent thing? No. When the concentration of these products starts going down, what happens to the one that's attached up to this enzyme? It lets go, turns loose. And when it turns loose, what happens to that enzyme? It starts back up, starts rolling again, starts making more end product. So this is a good way for you to save your resources, conserve your energy, be green, sort of. This is like being green today. All right, let me turn this recorder off and then I'll get some questions. Sure. Give me a second. Let me turn this off.